In this video, we're going to go over the template for the journal assignment in Module 6. You don't have to use this template. As always, you're welcome to use the directions in the module and in the rubric. But if you'd like to use the template, we're going to go through it today. The first thing you should write is your student name, of course, and then write your article pairing option. At the bottom of this document are all of the articles, the same ones you've picked for every other journal assignment, right? Don't pick a different pair, pick the same pair, and put 1, 2, or 3 right here. And then copy and paste the citation from Article 1 and copy and paste the citation for Article 2. Okay. And once you fill out this template, you don't need to do anything else in the module directions. You don't need to write paragraphs or anything like this. Okay. And notice the numbers here. When you receive feedback, okay, particularly problematic feedback in your rubric, these numbers will help you pinpoint what the problem is. So it might say something's wrong with question 2. You know, you omitted question 2, means you didn't write your article pairing 1, 2, or 3. So let's look at 5 and 6. Which statistical methods did the authors choose? So once you read the article, you'll see that most authors use many different statistical methods. As long as you can describe one really well, you only need to pick one for 5 and 6. Make sure you pick a different one for 5 and 6. We don't want to see the same type of explanation for 5 and 6. So make sure they are different tests or techniques. Okay. So some examples are 1 sample t-tests, 2 sample t-tests, paired sample t-tests, regression, chi-squared tests, things like that. And don't include data collection techniques. Okay. Don't include any sort of survey scaling that they use or anything like that. All right. Also, don't include simple descriptive statistics like means and standard deviations. We want advanced statistical techniques, well, relatively speaking, such as the different types of t-test, regression, chi-squares test, Fisher's test, and so on. Okay. 7 and 8 are why did the authors choose the statistical techniques above? So you have to pair the data in the article and talk about that with respect to the purpose of your tests. Okay. It should be very clear what the purpose of a test is. And a test is not just to compare two groups. There are myriad tests to compare two groups. Okay. For example, an independent samples t-test compares the mean of two independent groups. Okay. So we need to be very specific about why they use that. And it might require research for whatever technique you chose from the article. If we haven't covered it in class yet, you might need to research it. 9 and 10, do you think these methods were appropriate? Just write yes or no. That's it for 9 or 10. For 11 and 12, if the answer above is yes, why were they appropriate? So again, you might restate the purpose of the test and bring in maybe the data types that were mentioned in the article and how that matched up with the test and what it was useful for. Okay. If the answer is no, say why it was inappropriate. What about it was not working? Number 13, a similarity in the statistical methods chosen in the articles. Make sure you discuss specific statistical methods and techniques. For example, you could say something like both articles utilized logistic regression, or both the articles utilized the Fisher's exact test. 14 and 15 are what is the difference in the statistical methods chosen? Okay. Again, your methods are things like regression, the specific t-test, chi-square test, and so on. So you might say for 14, this article chose logistic regression, and 15 would say this article didn't choose logistic regression, instead it chose something else. Okay. So whatever you put for 14 shouldn't be in the second article, and whatever you put for 15 shouldn't be in a technique you used in the first article. 16 and 17 are asking you to describe a strength of the statistical or data collection methods of this article. So we discussed several statistical methods up to this point that are in the article. Well, I should say at least one for each article. What are the strengths of that particular statistical method? Okay. All statistical methods have strengths and weaknesses. You might have to research this. Okay. You shouldn't just restate the findings. Like, a strength is never, it confirmed the hypothesis or it showed this result. That's not a strength of the statistical method. Okay, that might be a strength of something else, but it's not a strength of the statistical method. Okay. And you absolutely shouldn't just list a bunch of techniques that they used. You need to discuss the strengths of those techniques. Other examples of strengths would include specific measuring techniques that might be good in some way, like why are those measuring techniques good? Specific sampling techniques, why was their sampling technique good? Or the robustness of a statistical analysis technique. Okay. And robustness typically means when the assumptions aren't all met, the statistical technique still performs pretty well. Okay, so you need to look for very specific things in the article, and it may require outside research on your part. I know 18 and 19 ask you to describe a weakness of the statistical or data collection methods. So this is when you say, oh, well, this statistical technique was used, but we have to be careful with that technique because, you know, it requires this assumption, which might not be met. Things like that. Again, you don't want to just state the results of the study or list a bunch of techniques. Okay? And the examples are the same as far as what could constitute a weakness. Was your measuring technique weak? You know, was it not a great technique? Was your sampling technique not so great? Was the article's robustness or lack thereof weak in the statistical technique? So you can critique all those types of things. We really only need one good one per article. I'd much rather have one good weakness of the statistical techniques or data collection methodology of each article than 5 different bullet points of things that aren't really on point. And 20 and 21 give an example of how a healthcare professional could use the findings in each article in a professional setting, or how you could use the findings in a personal situation. Again, using the findings does not just mean I'm going to be informed going forward. Okay, it's very specifically how would you use the findings professionally or personally. Okay, or someone else could use the findings professionally or personally. Okay? And this is where you're going to discuss the findings. You know, the results of the study. And this only needs to be, you know, 1 or 2 sentences. It's not a lengthy conclusion, but it should incorporate the results of the findings. That's what the study actually proved or didn't prove. Okay. And that's it for this template. Again, don't alter anything in this template. Just fill in your answers. You don't need to adjust the margins or adjust the table in any way. Just fill in your answers. Okay. We'll see you next time.